What is up, folks? This is Addy Ads, and this is Public Intelligence slash the Epstein Files, kind of a joint episode today. And we got a great guest today, Jaggyish, aka Brianna or Bree. She's a digital culture analyst, podcaster, citizen journalist who covered, along with myself, the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell at the Southern District of New York courthouse. And we're going to talk to her about her experience covering the trial and our interactions during the trial, and as well as her career, where's she from, and then how she got into the work she's doing today. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, Bree.
Thank you so much for having me. I know we keep trying to get this done, and schedules are a funny thing, so I'm glad it worked out.
Yes. I honestly, the biggest thing for me was getting my book, the paperback, both and the ebook out. So I did get that out, and the link for that, for people want to thank you for, if you want to support, is in the description box. So I'm a lot more open now for interviews again, which is kind of what I started doing this sort of work. But if you want to kind of beef up your introduction a bit, Bree, for us, if you want to tell us where you're from. I know you're based in Brooklyn now, and how you got to covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And, however you want to take that, we can go the trial first, or if you want to tell us about your career first, or education, life experiences, wherever you want to take it.
You got it. So I'm from upstate New York. I moved to the city about 8 years ago. Graduated from a little college outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I'm a social media manager. I've been social media managing small businesses for about 7 years. Recently, I started having bigger accounts that were more political. And it drew me because there's a lot of boundaries when you're working for public clients. And I wanted to experiment with what can happen on social media just personally, so I could have a portfolio to say, like, people really react and want to hear, and it's okay to have honest conversations on social media. Social media is still very taboo for so many companies. There's so many legal, corners and shadows. So it was really exciting to test the boundaries on my own. Personally, my experience in the sexual crimes side of life, someone I know, a man in my life, was arrested for having sex with an underage girl. And he had an amazing lawyer, and her lawyer was not amazing, and he was found not guilty, even though he was totally guilty. And that happened to me like in my early 20s. I witnessed my friend go through that. And I just have always been really interested and intrigued by the classism involved in law in America and, everywhere. So the Ghislaine and Jeffrey story was absolutely intriguing to me. And the way it's continued to play out is absolutely intriguing. I really feel like it's going to be our generations who killed Kennedy. It just, I don't think it's ever going to be over,
Yeah. Yes, I think so. I think you could be right there, and it's so big, it's such a big story when you look at the players that are involved. So you actually had a personal experience with, as you mentioned, with kind of that class system, whereby people with more money kind of get better treatment from the justice system.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it a bit before, but how did you start getting to do the social media work?
I was a nanny in a really wealthy neighborhood, and some of the moms had small businesses, and they asked me to start doing social media, like, while the kids are in school. And I guess just was naturally really good at, like, I like to think I have cool aesthetic taste. So I think social media is a lot of getting the colors and the patterns and like the look correct. And I've always been a writer. I've self-published twice. And I'm always in writing groups. I'm in a really great writing group, Brooklyn Writers Collective. And I've been introduced to some fabulous and connected and intelligent women who've helped me take my social media business to even bigger platforms with bigger companies who really prefer I don't speak about my time with them when I speak about the Ghislaine trial. So it's been really cool, like, just trajectory of social media. And I think that there's, my passion also is making the internet a safe and honest place. The internet's really not an honest place. It's an exciting place. It's a mysterious place. It's not so much an honest place. So I think it should be treated like a 10th planet. Like, and it needs to have the truth. If it's going to be on Earth, it needs to reflect the actual truth of the Earth. So, I want the internet to be a really safe space with all true perspectives, not just the paid perspectives. And I'm in it for the long haul with third party journalism. And I hope that we can grow into a future where it's not called third party journalism and it's just called fucking journalism.
Right, right. And I think it's changing and it's getting to that point. But yeah, in the wider public, the social understanding of the societal understanding of what it is that people like us do, yeah, I think has a very long way to go. But it's pretty interesting. And now, that's your main job. And then, as far as the trial, was that just out of interest at first that you got into that case, or do you remember the hook point for the Epstein Maxwell case where you first heard about it?
I I don't remember like where I was in the very first article that dropped, but I remember when quarantine began in the summer of 2020, I was in a writing class, and there was a woman in the class who has influence in a really pop culture way, and she had made some really anti-feminist statements and it made me cry for like 3 days. And my best friend was like, "What do you want to do? Like, let's cheer you up." And I was like, "You know what I want to do? I want to go to Jeffrey Epstein's house and I want to just stare at the door." And we took an Uber, and it was like right when Ubers were like, you're allowed to take them again. Like, we're all masked up going to Manhattan for the first time. And I went back home and wrote a long form about Epstein. And I wrote a long form about what it is to have gone through puberty as a teenage girl when the internet was becoming really popular. And what it is to have sexuality as a woman, and why are some women freaky, and why are some women prudish, and why do men like not look at women as humans all the time. And I took a very feminist stance on the piece that I wrote, and I did a diary excerpt, an imagined diary excerpt, imagining that I was Ghislaine writing about Jeffrey, and writing about I've always wanted to please a man, and Jeffrey tells me exactly how to please him. So I think it was like that kind of demented desperation that led her to be, so involved with giving him the illegal and horrible and unethical things that he wanted, which was underage girls. And so my own like feminist art and my own experiences in life and my obsession with digital, it was like the perfect storm. And we were in quarantine. I had plenty of time to think way too hard about anything I wanted. And yeah, I spent a lot of time at his house. I visited a few times, and as the case grew, I just couldn't get enough of the information.
Sure, sure. And where did you go to for that info? Where was there anywhere you could find it, or did you have certain sources that you liked?
As I went to the trial a few months ago, I realized that I know nothing compared to a lot of the other like you and Marlon and the True Anon kids. And just, I was like, wow, I really thought that like my Google alerts were enough, but Julie K. Brown, Jacob, like you guys really have way more sources than I could even start naming. So I think I was the rookie of uh, of everyone there, but it was really interesting because I've never walked in the room and been like the least educated person, and it was such a cool experience to go to the trial, because I was like, I thought I knew everything, and I really just like know nothing compared to everyone who's like doubled, tripled, quadrupled their homework.
Wow, that's a really cool statement. That's a very interesting take there. Yeah, and you mentioned a few of the people that you met, and and some of the podcasters and independent media and legacy media. I didn't know some of them. I did prior to going to the trial. But you also, I wanted to bring this up. You were the one that gave me the spot in line, and then I got into the courthouse, and then I should have been, in theory, allowed into the courtroom with Ghislaine Maxwell, but
Yeah.
they denied me. So for those that didn't know, it was Bree that did that,
Yeah.
Jaggyish. So
I
thank you for that. And I felt so bad because I was like, that was all for naught. It was like
I know.
that court administration is just something else.
They had your number and they didn't want you in there on purpose. Really.
Maybe,
Um,
yeah, maybe.
yeah, I've been in trials for 2 other cases, one high profile, one not high profile, and my experience as, I don't know, a vulnerable person is it makes me sick when I get home after sharing a room with someone like that, and I've had to sleep for, like, 3 days straight because I was, like, in the room of someone evil, and I just didn't really wanna do that with Ghislaine. I could feel her energy through the TV screen, and I was like, "This is enough for me," you know?
Sure, sure. Well, that was very generous of you. And could you share what those other trials were that you attended, and was it for the same reasons, kind of citizen journalism, or just interest? Or?
One was for work, then I can't speak about that one, and the other one was my friend, that was, like, a local court, like a county court years ago, and,
Hmm.
I went to Google and to research that trial in 2020 when the Epstein case broke, when I was or, really gained momentum, and when I was writing my long form, and all of the information from that smaller case has been wiped from the internet, which just really makes me so angry that, um, being able to pay for things to get deleted is not just a monarchy thing. You can be anyone with enough money, and you can make anything go away.
Yeah, that's accurate for sure. And I've noticed that about certain people. You just can't really find a whole lot on them, and you can tell it's on purpose. When did you start writing, and what did you start writing about?
I've always been a writer, but my first book that I self-published was in 2018. It was called Clocking Out. And I wrote it about being in college and then thinking, "Oh, I graduated college, so then that means tomorrow after I walk off the stage, I'm gonna know everything and I'm just gonna have it all figured out." And then you don't. And I moved to New York City with one suitcase and $300 and nowhere to live. And I'm really like, with the help of amazing friends, um, and an amazing support system, like I have figured it out. And I wrote the story before I figured it out, but I was still kind of like my mind was blown. Like I wish that I didn't go to college. As a writer, as a creative, it's so unnecessary unless you're, in my opinion, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer. It's just like a classist thing that we do. And my
Oh yes.
family, yeah, I come from a family of immigrants from Sicily, and I'm the oldest grandchild. And it was a really, really big deal that I go to college. And, now the younger cousins, they went to trade school and they're making way more money than me. And I think my grandparents, after they saw, like, oh, it's college isn't really actually that important.
Mhm.
So I do all that I can to dilute the importance of of college and universities for creatives. So that was kind of where my book was going, of like the real experience is not in the classroom, it's in life.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great point. And again, you went to school in Pennsylvania. And when did you matriculate?
When did I move to New York City?
I'm sorry, graduate.
I was like, "What's matriculate?" 2011, I graduated college.
Okay. 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 Wow. Okay. And yeah, that's I would agree too. I've actually thought about starting to do videos about it when I have some time, because that's how strongly I feel about uh like, to put it, like you said, diluting the importance of it because of my experience too. And it wasn't like bad or all bad or anything like
Right.
that, but it was just, you know, uh, it was unnecessary. And like you said, it's like a
Yeah,
classist. I see it as like a societal approval thing, more than
absolutely.
anything. You know, But yeah, that's interesting. And then you said you have another book as well.
The other long form I did was my website I put out in 2020, which was Jaggyish.com. The project was American Girls. It was 3 pieces. It was pretty feminist. I did 3 pieces, and then I did voiceovers for all 3. It was like I called it a digital experience because it's you've never seen a format like that before. I at least I hadn't. Um, where I wrote about my miscarriage in one piece and how I miscarried while my partner was a veteran of the Marines, and how I went to appointments with him at the VA, and he had been blown up by an IED and lived to tell the tale, and he had really bad shoulder pain, and they had the nerve to ask him if they said, "Do you think your shoulder pain is from getting blown up by the IED?" And I was like, they make veterans sing for their supper and then wonder why they go crazy. Like, that's insane. And then at the same time, like, I was going through a miscarriage, and it was like a very death becomes all of us kind of piece. Um, the other piece was my experience in the trial with my friend who was raped. And then the third piece was my Epstein piece. In that piece, I was super candid about my own experience as a sexual woman who grew up with the internet and being confused, and my friend who um, experimented with camming online, and her boyfriend caught her and he smashed all of her belongings. And I included like interviews with her in that. So it was like a compilation of like the female experience and the trauma that we experience as women, but also as men, like veteran men, and um, the human experience. I don't want to give it a gender because I know we all have pain, but that was what my piece was really about.
What do you think of OnlyFans? Since you mentioned camming, I think is that what you meant, webcam? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
OnlyFans is amazing. It really gives users control of their content and of their money. I think Instagram is beginning to lean towards it. They're experimenting now with paid content producers. They
Okay.
do monthly subscriptions, and there's people on OnlyFans who are not putting out anything nude. They're just putting out information. Like this one woman, her handle is the Hood Healer, and she's really intuitive and she's very holistic. And she is on OnlyFans because Instagram shadow bans her all the time for speaking out about the VAX. And
Wow, really? I
mhm.
did not know OnlyFans was being used for that. That's like that's very interesting.
Yeah,
She's more of a researcher or a journalist?
she's just her own bitch. She's no, she's badass. You'll have to check her out. It's
Sure. Yeah.
at the Hood Healer, and she
Okay.
just goes through like natural remedies. It's for people who are like really spiritually inclined, and like different ways to like clean your house or like set intentions and astrology. And she was pregnant recently, and she gave birth, and she spoke about like her journey, and um being a Black woman who's not vaccinated and who didn't wanna go to a hospital and what that looks like, and just a lot of things that are shadow banned on Instagram because it's a product of Mark Zuckerberg, who is a product of, billionaire mindset and just having more, more, more and being part of the system. I think OnlyFans is uh, a really good goal for Web3 to be more like OnlyFans, to be completely honest with you. And do I think there's sexual trauma and darkness in OnlyFans and in Chatterbait and all these porn, everything? Yeah, there's definitely like ways that you should not use the internet, but there's also ways where you can be fully aware of what's going on and um, not be doing things because you're desperate, just be doing things because you know how they work for you and you can keep a balance. And I believe everyone should be making their own decisions.
Excellent. Excellent. And what was your takeaway from the trial, would you say, as far as your whole experience of it? Because you were there pretty much every day, weren't you?
Yeah, aside from when I got COVID, I was there every single day.
When was that? Because I got sick too.
I got sick right before you. I don't
Oh,
want to
really?
say I don't want to say who, but another third party journalist began the trial pretty sick, and I asked them, "Have you been tested?" And they said it's just a sinus infection, and I was like, "I don't think so." And this person and I were like BFF, sharing coffee, sharing water, and then they were down for the count, and then I was down for the count, and I was taking the subway twice a day, and before I was never like leaving my neighborhood. So I do understand that you were like skeptical, but for me, I saw my trajectory of how I caught COVID. Um, my takeaways, I had a few. Um, I had an argument with mainstream journalist about he made a sexual joke to me. I mentioned it on my podcast. The next day, he yelled at me in front of people in the hallway of the court. Um,
A mainstream journalist?
oh yeah, he sure did.
Can
You were
you
upstairs.
can you tell us who it is, or do we have to go to your podcast?
No, I'll tell. It's like at this point, I don't really care. It was Financial Times. Um,
Okay, I can't remember who that was.
I don't know his real name, and it's better that I don't because I don't want to ruin his whole entire life, right? Like he's a dumbass, whether I say his name or not, and he whatever. Um, Karma's not my responsibility, Addie.
Of course, of
But
course.
we were sitting on the benches in the main hallway having coffee one morning, and I said, "Hey, who do you work for?" Like we all asked each other that all the time. And he said Financial Times, and I said, "Oh, you must have really enjoyed the testimony yesterday." And he said, "Oh, about the blowjobs?" And I said, "No, from the J.P. Morgan chairman who was talking about authorized signatories on shared accounts and like how Jeffrey wired Ghislaine like $20 million." And he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I missed that. The fellatio times." And I said, "Is that what everyone calls you?" And he said, "No, I just thought of this right now." And I was like, "So I'm sitting here talking to you, and all you're thinking is blowjob jokes, and we're at a fucking rape trial? Like, what is wrong with you?" And so I went on my podcast, that night and spoke about it. And the next morning, he stopped me in the hallway and was like, "How dare you? You're not a journalist. You're not an adult. You're so irresponsible." And I said, "Men like you are the reason that we are here, just so you know." And it was so awkward. And the ABC News team caught on to it. They didn't like me. They were saying really mean things about me to other journalists. And I felt like there was already a tension between third party and social media journalism, or mainstream and social media journalism. And I always feel a divide between millennials and boomers and Gen Xers. I'm really ageist like that, I have to admit. And that was a moment where I was like, "You're mad that like my Instagram page and my podcast gets more listens than your click through article on like some mainstream like old white man blog." Sorry,
Yeah, those were the ABC people.
that was my feelings towards the Financial Times people, my
Oh,
ABC News people.
yeah, yeah.
ABC News team was really good. They were very strong. They knew exactly what they were doing. Conniving, yeah. But they clearly, it's not their first rodeo. They were terrifying. Um,
She tried to be. I know who you're talking about. It was like
oh,
I didn't
I'm
even.
not talking about her. She was not terrifying. That silver
Oh,
fox man was terrifying. That little
are you
girl,
talking about James, whatever his name
yeah,
is?
yeah.
Oh, he was kind of nice to me.
That's what I'm saying. Very nice, scary, because you can tell he was just dodging and weaving. He was going up to Ghislaine, saying hello at the last day.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
saw that. Yep.
they had a whole system of seating down. I admired James' work, to be completely honest with you. I really did. That girl, whatever her name is, I thought she was really rude. She was unfriendly. She made a comment that I'm not a real journalist and I should let them do their jobs. I'm like, babe, it's open to the public. I'm not here as an intern. I'm here as like a person that like wakes up for like the love of it and the passion for it. And How dare you demean someone coming in if you're going to be this legacy reporter? Like, how dare you? You know?
I got that vibe too, kind of arrogant, rude. She claimed that like a business card I had was not real or something like that. It was yeah, but I only had one interaction with the guy. He just asked me about my sweatshirt. He just commented on it, but he was pretty polite. But
He
yeah,
was
I did
really
hear about
polite. Yeah.
him talking to or trying to talk to Ghislaine there on the last day.
Well, I think it's interesting that he spoke with her family lawyer, not a defense attorney, like a different lawyer who was there, um, and right before he spoke with Ghislaine. And then a few weeks after the trial, Good Morning America, ABC News, had an interview with one of Ghislaine's brothers. So I do think he was successful in getting some kind of interview, just wasn't with Ghislaine, it was with her brother. If I were to hinder a guess of how that all went down, I would say they all are connected.
Yeah, yeah. Well, props to him for doing that. I mean, it's like probably easier to do when you are ABC, right? When you work for ABC. But
Yeah.
what about other interactions you had with reporters during the trial? Positive or negative, neutral?
Yeah. Well, I also want to say James isn't great just because he worked for ABC. Like, he's done a lot about war reporting, and I think that's super important. So hats off to him. But furthermore, Julie K. Brown was like a really interesting person to me. I mean, I was standing next to her in line the first day. I had no idea who she was. Everyone else was fanning over her, and I was like, huh. And she ended up being such a mama bear, such a kind woman with a lot to offer. And then I read her book after the trial. I once I learned who everyone was, I didn't want to read anyone's content until after. I just wanted to take people as, you know, face value. And Julie K. Brown is someone that I wish I read her book first. So I probably would have brought her breakfast and a hot coffee every day if I knew how badass she really is, you know. Um,
What do you think
did
about her getting sued?
by who? I didn't know this.
She got sued by Courtney Wild and Haley Robson about at least a week ago, if not a couple weeks ago. Yeah, for making false statements, threatening one of them because they wouldn't allow her to print certain things that they told her.
It's really
Um,
interesting how Julie and Vicky Ward are both females who broke really important parts of the story since the beginning of the story, right? Before it was even like really on anyone's radar. And they both have such interesting relationships with the victims. And you have to imagine, if you're a journalist, you really have to be really intimate to get the full story. And I think when you go from journalist to friends with victims and you're like, I'm sorry, I want to tell the story. And the victims are like, I changed my mind. And then the journalist is like, but you can change the world. Like, these feelings just, they mix. And it's hard to have boundaries anymore when the journalist wants to change the world and the victim just wants to feel safe at home.
sure, sure. Yeah, and I don't know. I covered it a few weeks ago, so that broke on the third. So about 3 weeks ago tomorrow. We got a comment here. Miami Herald is a limited hangout, but it's where I like to hang out. Says that guy in the comments there. But yeah, that's interesting because I didn't really interact. I tried to interact with her on I think at least 2 days. But she was on the phone once, and then the other time, just not very open in terms of
Yeah.
nonverbal communication. So I didn't approach. But
She was slow to warm, but then when you warm, you like get it, and you just like she was like, "What are all these little Instagrammers doing at this courthouse?" Right? She's like been to a million trials, and we have to admit, Addie, we have to admit it was kind of a shit show. Like, it was even like the COVID tests every day. We would scan a QR code and it was like, do you have COVID? No. Are you coughing? No. Does anyone, have COVID? No. Okay, you can go in to the Supreme Court. And it was like we were in the elevator with Ghislaine's siblings and Bobby Sternheim, and it was just like, no wonder Julie was like, "What the fuck? Like, I've written a 400-page book, and I've given my life, and I've spent every last penny on this trial, only to come here and it being like just kind of willy nilly." I understood why she was really skeptical at first.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. Trying to think. Yeah, I think I interacted with most, not all of them, but most people that were there every single day. But yeah, like I said, there was a couple people I didn't. But yeah, it was a great experience. But yeah, any other that you want to shout out as far as people you worked with during the trial or
Yeah,
you met or
Marlon Ettinger, are you following his
yeah,
work?
yeah, yep.
Such an incredible person, and I'm going to tell this story, and I hope he doesn't kill me, but I called him like the king of the elevator because he ran into everybody in the elevator, the whole defense team at one point, and he would just say hello and ask them questions. And one time we were in the elevator coming up from lunch, and Ghislaine's sister Isabel was in the elevator, and Marlon started speaking French to her, and it really frazzled her. And she got off at the wrong floor and came into the overflow room and sat down, and then realized that she wasn't in the right courtroom. And she walked out going like this because she was like, Marlon had just, he's such a nice man. He didn't mean to frazzle her. I think he asked her, like, how's your sister doing? And, and she was so razzled, and I was like, wow, like they like that, like he really can humanize anyone in such a gorgeous way. It wasn't demeaning at all. And I've continued to follow his work, and he's a writer and a reporter and a journalist to trust and to watch out for. And obviously the Truanon, Liz, and Brace were the rainbows of my day. Those guys are um, mega entertaining, mega researched on this and many topics. And I don't know what your relationship is with them, but there
I
was a
interacted with one of them because it's a man and a woman, right? Is that
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
I interacted with the guy a couple of times. It was one of the jury deliberation days. I was actually just chatting with him and Marlon in the morning, but I still need to reach out to them for to chat, hopefully, because
Yeah.
I would like to get their take because I asked pretty much everybody, but which I guess understandably so, none of the mainstreamers really uh, joined us on any roundtables or any of my shows or anything like that. But I didn't know that about that story. I knew that he had spoken to her in French on the elevator, but I didn't know that she had gotten flustered and gotten off on the wrong floor. That's so funny.
Yeah, and like one time I posted this meme. I like made this meme of Bobby Sternheim wearing purple next to a picture of Ursula from The Little Mermaid, like wearing purple, and they like the same haircut and the same necklaces. And the next day, I'm standing in the elevator, and Bobby gets in, and we're like this close, and I was like, "Good morning," and she was like, "Good morning," and I was like, "I'm peeing my pants right now." What? And it was like such a strong energy. That it was that trial. I mean, and like getting to know the security guards was like a whole vibe. And um
Yeah, it
I
was a vibe. Yeah.
the first day there was victims in and out on some days, and the first day there was a victim who had settled with the Epstein's victims fund, and there with her lawyer. And all of these reporters kept coming up to her wanting to get like a one liner. And this one reporter, God bless his soul, did not know how to make an icebreaker. And he goes, "Hey, I'm from blah, blah, blah. You know, I just learned that my mom was raped when she was in high school. It's crazy. I didn't realize that everyone just gets raped all the time." Or like something like really close to that. And she was like, and I was sitting there like,
Who was that? Who was the
I don't
victim?
want to. It's so horrible. Like he was a nice man, just a fucking idiot. I can't.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Excellent. Well, what have you been working on since then, Bree? Since the trials concluded, what you've been up to, and what are you looking forward to doing?
Well, since the trial wrapped up, I continued to podcast, and then I get just really intimidated speaking about like I feel like I'm vax injured, and I started having conversations about that, and kind of since the trial ended have not been doing as much outspoken conversation as I did during the trial. I've been more to myself, just keeping my head down, doing corporate jobs, just to, pay my rent and keep everything floating until I can feel like I've really settled. That trial really rattled me, and seeing the things that continued to unfold, that Virginia settled her lawsuit spun me, that John Paul was
John Luke
suicided.
Brunel?
John Luke Brunel,
Yeah.
thank you, was suicided, spun me. The fact that the queen probably is dead and no one wants to just say it spins me. Um, I feel like I'm still recuperating, and everyone's doing such a great job of reporting that I'm just enjoying my view of watching you all like continue to kill it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Bree. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What about favorite authors and books, that have had a good influence on you, or shorter pieces too, if that's the case.
Yeah. Lisa Taddeo, Three Women, I think is one of the more important books probably of our generation. She um, spent years driving back and forth across America, interviewing three different women who were all going through, their own deep, dark secrets and unearthing them, and what it is to tell stories about your sexuality. I've really enjoyed that book. I enjoyed the follow-up book called Animal, about a young woman who had an affair with an older man, and he committed suicide in front of her. Um, and just like the dynamics of a younger woman, older man kind of dynamic. I loved American Horror Story Impeachment. I think that they did a really good job with putting small. Did you watch that? It was
I didn't.
the Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky story,
Oh
um,
wow.
where
Okay.
Monica Lewinsky was an executive producer on it. And it's like episode 1, she's carrying a pizza box, and we all know why they put that little, Easter egg in there for us. And I'm enjoying things like that. Yeah, where are
Okay.
you at with everything?
As far as like reading influences right now, or
Reading influences, and like how are you recuperating from what we saw, what we thought we saw, and then what happened, and then we haven't spoken about, maybe you don't want to, and that's fine, the
what's that?
juror, and I think it's super interesting, the journalist who broke the story. I think that was all very contrived. I don't think that she meant to be a victim of I don't think that Lucia knew what she was getting into, but I feel like they baited her in a way, and they saw this woman that was eager to be first one out, first one out, first one out on all stories. She was killing it every day. She was always getting the first stories out. And she didn't always have an editor. She was doing a lot of stuff independently, but she has a huge platform. And I think that maybe I'm being insensitive, and maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist, but when I read a, her story about the juror saying, "Oh, I was sexually abused," I was like, really? You should publish that before sentencing? That seems really not well thought out. And, within 24 hours, we learned that that was not a good idea. And now look where we are. And I think that there's too many coincidences of this fucking juror and working for the Carlisle group and all of I think it's all bullshit.
That's pretty perceptive, Bria. I actually had the same contention, but I don't think I've verbalized it yet. And I think it's the key there is Vicky Ward, because it seemed like those two kind of got close over the trial. Because the day that broke, they both posted picture like together, where they're like together and they're like praising each other and stuff. So I think it was kind of a Sith Lord relationship.
I think that Vicky was out of the country for the verdict. I think that Vicky was posting to support Lucia because I think that Lucia was mentally not in a good space when that all went down. Um, but I do think there was a lot of like praising Vicky Ward. I don't know her personally, and certainly you have to give kudos where kudos are due. As a female journalist, in the time where she came up, certainly was not easy. But this trial is no one's trial. It does not belong to any one journalist, and certainly is irresponsible for anyone to become bigger than the story. And
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it's a bit foolish, also considering that the powers that be would rather us all look like clowns than to have us look like we know what we're talking about. Am I making
Right.
sense? Am I being too vague?
No, no, no. You're right. I think you're on. I think you're on the ball there. My point was, I think Crowley, Miss Crowley, got that the connection to Scotty David through Ward. That's what I speculated.
Oh,
Yeah, because it's like, how do you get hooked? Somebody connected the two.
yeah.
Presumably, unless Scotty David just like DM'd her, which would be like so random. Like, oh yeah, like out of all, why would he pick her? Then is the question.
Right,
But
'cause there
there
was
had to have been a facilitator, I would think.
I was wondering if it was the documentary that, was filming Miss Crowley that I assumed it was the documentary that connected the juror and Miss Crowley, but I think the idea that maybe it was Vicky Ward instead, that makes a lot more sense. Vicky maybe was like, "I'm not in town. My girl can take it over." But, maybe this is part of the sealed documents they don't want us to know about. I don't know.
You could be right. You very well could be right. Yeah, and we're hopefully gonna see those. But sentencing June 25th. Are you gonna be there? I'm definitely gonna be there
Oh, yeah, with bells on. Are you kidding me?
with bells on.
With bells on. I have you gone down the conspiracy theories? I don't even want to say that about Victoria's Secret. Just like
With
I,
regards to Wexner, or
the culture of it, and just I don't know about what your high school culture was, but like my high school culture was like all the girls, Victoria's Secret bathing suits, underwear, bras, the stupid little dogs, all in our lockers, all in our pink bedrooms at home, and it's just crazy that this circle of powerful men were also in charge of the greatest underwear and lingerie brand that like the majority of women around the world, especially in the US, had on their naked bodies. And to me, it's just like I don't think that people really understand that this really does affect all of us. We were all part of the culture of this, the Victoria's Secret fashion show that we all like that broke records every year, like all of those girls were victims. They just don't want to come out because there are so many of them and they all have great careers. But like pop culture, a lot of like the great, gorgeous women of pop culture of our time probably went to that island. The people that we look up to that we think like they're so sexy, they're so rich, like they were probably abused too. And I know we're running out of time and I know it's just, a fraction of what there is to say, but a lot has been glamorized in 90s and early millennium pop culture, and Jeffrey Epstein was certainly and his friends were certainly an enormous part of that.
yeah, that's a great point. Just how big the L brands or the limited Wexner's influence on fashion and lingerie and culture, as you mentioned, in general. These people are extremely influential in that sense on a societal level. But I wanted to ask you, where can people support you, Bree? And uh, yeah, where can people support you? I got your links, your Instagram. I think I got your website in the show notes as well.
Yeah, you
Um,
can find me at Jaggyish, my Instagram. Whenever I decide to podcast, whenever the wind blows me that direction, you'll see those posts on my Instagram. I have my little link tree in my bio for my long form writing and just all the things. You find me there.
Yes, yeah, you got your speaking podcast on Apple, right? iTunes, and
Yep,
it says
on Apple and
Bree knows
Spotify.
literally nothing and shares it all with you.
Yeah, what do I know, Addie? I don't know. Maybe not a lot, or maybe everything. I don't know.
And then you got Instagram, Jaggyish, right? Oh, which I follow
Yeah.
you there.
Yep.
And looks like you just were in a photo shoot recently, which I used for the thumbnail. I hope that's okay. Um,
Yeah, thank you. My friend did my headshots. I needed a little update.
okay, sure. And then Twitter as well. You're Jaggyish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sweet. Anything you want to cover that we didn't cover today, Bree, as far as the trial interactions with people at the trial, who you thought did some of the best coverage, who did the worst, and where you see Andrew and Virginia and now Maxwell, and if you want to speak on Brunel too, obviously you just mentioned it in passing, but yeah, anything that we didn't get to tonight.
I think that it's really too bad that Virginia took the money. Sure, maybe she'll give it to victims, maybe, but maybe she won't. She was a teenage madam, in my opinion. I think she was a big part of the problem. And
Do you think she gets too much credit,
yeah, I
or
think
not enough criticism, maybe? Or
yeah. I think that like we're in this culture of like believe all women or else you are a bad person. And there needs to be more consideration. Virginia's life certainly was not a fairy tale. Sexually abused and abandoned by her parents since day one. She was always struggling. She learned the quickest way to make money was to sell her body. And for that, there's no two ways around it. But she absolutely was the reason that the majority of the teenage girls in the Palm Beach area, she made commission, and she had like dozens, if not hundreds, of girls at Epstein's house giving him massages, and she made $300 every time she brought a new girl over. And I think that people are afraid to give her too much criticism because no one wants to be the person that says that woman's not telling the whole truth. But that woman's not telling the whole truth.
wow,
And I I'll say it for all the men who feel like they can't say it, but that woman's not telling the whole truth.
you just beat me to it. I was just gonna say. I was just gonna say that because I've heard, like, going back to like 2020, people telling me like, "Yo, she's in a Mossad kid on from the time," which is like this group of dozen Mossad agents that worked together over a period of like years. And she was part of the whole thing. And someone else recently was like, "Man, that Boys guy, David Boys. I'm not sure about him." But yeah, like you said, like it's like kind of looks weird if, as a young guy, to be like, I don't know, man. Especially like with who she is in the
Yeah.
context of, it's not like it's because there have been like at least there's one case that just got thrown out. It was some crazy lady who said she was a victim and it wasn't. But it's like this is the most credible witness. So it's like you don't want to ruin that too. Is also another motivation.
I
Never
think the
mind
true
the
Yeah. I
the
think the
society
truest
thing.
victims are the ones that don't wanna come out because 'cause they're like, "I'm too traumatized to even make words." Like, the girls who were just walking out of school and Ghislaine was standing outside being like, "Oh, do you wanna make money?" Like, I think that I think that there's girls under the age of, like, 13, under the age of, like, 12 who were truly sexually abused by Epstein and his friends, and I think the CLINTONS, that whole gang. Give me a second. I think that they've always been really up to something, and, someone I interacted with at the trial was one of the court reporters, or court sketch artists, and this court sketch artist is a whole subculture of people who've been to every trial that is nameable in, modern day history, and there was one, her name was Christine, she was incredible, and we would have lunch together, and she was like, "Epstein and Ghislaine had a child. Why do you think she suddenly just didn't wanna be around anymore?" And she was like, I think Ghislaine is fighting to get out of this situation so she can go back to being a mom. And I found it really interesting when the victim number 4 spoke about seeing a picture of Ghislaine pregnant in the house. Are you
I
following me?
remember
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
everyone, yeah. And
But
everyone
wouldn't her progeny be like in their 30s or 40s right now? Because she's like what, 60?
they'd probably be in their 20s because she stopped hanging out with Jeffrey in like 2005. So
Okay,
they
so she was what was that, like 15 years ago? So, that's getting up there though, isn't it? I don't know.
yeah, probably. I bet you if they did have a kid, it's like the same age as the Dubin girl.
Okay, she was like
She's like
what?
19 or 20 now. She's in like med school or like pre-med
Okay,
school.
okay, yeah,
But I think it's interesting and to consider that Ghislaine is a really immature person, grew up very immature and very spoiled, got way too ahead of herself in the cocaine 90s sex culture and had no idea what boundaries were and did horrible, awful things by allowing underage girls to come in and have sex with this older pedophile predator man. And then now she's like, how am I getting stuck holding the bag? And maybe she has a baby with Epstein, but doesn't want anyone to know because she doesn't want the child's life to be in danger as a teenager. Imagine a teenage human being or anyone walking around being Jeffrey Epstein's kid. You think they're living you think that that's fucked up. I wouldn't want anyone to know if he was my dad.
right, right. That person, yeah. Well, they would probably. I don't even know. That's bizarre to think about.
They really threw you a curveball. If you need a minute.
Yeah. She would have been like 45 though if she had a kid in 2005, if that were the case, unless it was earlier. Well, you mentioned if she was like 22, then no, she would be, I guess, closer to 40. Yeah.
I mean, crazier things have happened, especially when you're that wealthy and you have access to medical care, like
Right,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah, and she might not have even carried it. She just like was that obsessed with Epstein, you know. That's very interesting theory, Bree. That's great that you shared that. Because I do remember that coming up during court, and it was kind of passed over. At least I did. I was like, what
Well,
is that
because
about?
she was Caroline's diagnosed schizophrenic, and I think that it's easy for people to say she's just crazy when she shouted out, no, they asked her specifically, did you ever see a picture of Ghislaine pregnant? And she said yes, a naked picture of Ghislaine pregnant. And the defense kept asking people if they ever knew Ghislaine to be pregnant, but the prosecution never brought it up. And no one really could put their finger on it. And I don't know if it's like for future conversations or what they're doing, but I always did not understand. Also, like Jeff Pagliuca,
Yeah,
the way that he cross-examined victims in his monotone voice and the way he graded them was so horrible and bizarre and like makes me think that there's a class that you can take in law school of how to make people go crazy just using your voice.
yeah, yeah. Pagliuca, yeah, he was kind of rough. Yeah, yeah, he was kind of a derp, wasn't he? Kind of weird looking, weird.
Like, I'm like, brush your hair, and then he kept saying victims' names out loud when they asked to be anonymous. And it was just like, are you doing this on purpose? Because it seems like you're smart enough to not do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it was definitely on purpose. But yeah, anything else we didn't cover? Because that was great. That theory there, the Ghislaine Maxwell pregnancy theory. Haven't heard that one before, and there's actually, two connecting points there. So
House and Habit mentions it as well. She's another Instagram account who covered the trial. She had a similar conversation with the court sketch artist I mentioned about Ghislaine possibly being pregnant, and she posted about it on her Instagram. So Yeah, it's something to look into for future conversations. I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else we haven't covered? I feel like it's hard to really go through all of it, like every one section can be 2 hours, so it's like hard to cover it all.
Yeah, no, I think we did. And again, Bree's links are in the show notes if people wanna support her podcast, Instagram, Twitter, and website. And this will be available anywhere podcasts can be found. Likewise, and on Rockfin is where I'm sending people for videos. Of course, I'm still on Twitter and YouTube, Facebook, etc. But Rockfin is kind of where I'm concentrating my forces as far as video broadcasts go, and then Substack for writing ads.substack.com. So thanks
Awesome.
again for coming on the show, Brie. I really
It's
really
so cool to
appreciate it.
talk to you. Of course, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, and thanks to the audience as well. Stay frosty, folks, and we will see everybody next time.